Okay, I'm going to introduce this one as being a follow-up really to the previous one, which was called Immortals. Okay, because I did mention at the beginning of that one how um, kind of like the format of where I want to take like the next three videos. They're not all connected, but it's just the way they kind of flow quite nicely. So the last one was all kind of end times, kind of anarchy and stuff like that. That sort of aspect of it, coming judgments, those kind of things. And yeah, like well, I was talking about like Psalm 38, sorry, Psalm 83 and Ezekiel 38. I mentioned in there as well, which are wars coming against Israel. But that's going to kind of yeah, sort of feed in a bit into some of the bits and pieces I'm going to cover, not explicitly, but partially, and then it ends on this small little snippet of a dream, but it's just a perfect little, like a little bridge onto the next ones, which I'd already had planned, but I hadn't got the order planned, which is going to talk about really anarchy. I mean, like real problems, and there's some lessons in there. So there were ones that to be honest, I was going to bin them off, but wasn't going to bother. But they do lead nicely. They do lead nicely, and they do have some good lessons. It was one of those where I just sort of went, yeah, it's a bit mundane, that happens. But there's lessons in them. And so I think, okay, right, well, I can see that there's a lesson there. I have commented on it. It just didn't feel like super eventful. I mean, obviously, some of my dreams are just completely wild scenarios. And so they kind of stand out a bit more. This one is a triple dream in one night. So one to another to another. And it was while I was actually away with my wife. We went away for, our anniversary. So we went away, we went to like a nice big sort of, what would you call it? It's a hotel, but it's very nice. Loads of grounds, to it, like loads of gardens and stuff. We stayed there for a bit. No gym. Do like a gym. But yeah, so this happened then that night. So this was 22nd of the 6th, 2025. So this one, what should I call it? I'm going to call it something like, I might call it Superhero Moses or something like that. Might have like a slash in between because it's two different dreams. But this first one, Moses, very very brief. So to be fair, all these dreams are quite brief, but they're all completely different. So first one then. So a dream with an image of a big, large, open grassland. Okay, it was like I was on a slightly higher up place, just looking down on a big open plain. That just looked beautiful. Not inhabited at all, but it was like you'd look at it and think, well, that's a perfect place to put, some sort of a settlement. Because it looked lovely. Oh, it didn't have a river or anything going through it. I mean, that's kind of like something you're looking for, isn't it? A water source, but it just looked like lovely, lush grass and stuff like that. I imagine kind of what it was like for. This is where it links into the Moses thing. Kind of what I imagine it was like, when they were looking over the land as they were going into the land, seeing all this place and thinking, this is going to be ours. We're going to obviously going to take it because God's given it to us. But I bet it looked amazing. When they were looking at it from a high point, looking down. And that's what this was like. As I said, I was just seeing through my own eyes of this beautiful land. Okay, and what came up was. It felt like, so again, if you get an impression, don't you, from dreams? You don't necessarily hear words. Sometimes you just get an impression. Like I mentioned with the previous dream, where there's a robots around, and I just felt this air of anxiety and just general worry. But that's without anybody saying anything or anything even happening. I just knew that there was something going on. Okay, so this was a similar sort of thing, obviously very different, but it felt like someone was sort of saying, as I'm looking over this grass plain, that I've given you all of this, and this is your dominion. But look what you've done with it. And I don't know what that meant. Look what you've done with it. Not sure, because of all I could see was just a grassland. So I don't know whether it was sort of maybe representing Earth and giving you this beautiful place. This place to look after. Because we as humans, we're meant to be, we're the ones looking after the planet. We're kind of like the caretakers, and obviously we have dominion over. We have dominion obviously over the animals and things like that, and rule it. But it's kind of ours to look after. We're kind of like the gardeners, I suppose. That kind of thing. But Yeah, look at what you've done with it. Yeah, as I said, it really reminded me of someone looking over a beautiful sort of garden from their house or something. But that's what it kind of felt like at the time. But as I said, I was looking over a much bigger, vast area. And the dream, yeah, at the time of this dream, as I said, I was at this hotel, which we just that night gone out and walked around the gardens and stuff like that. So that's where that garden thing came from. But what the message of, I've given you all of this, you have dominion, but look at what you've done with it. I was just kind of left thinking, what does that mean? And I still don't know really what it means. Obviously, I'm trying to deduce maybe what it means around, maybe it's representing the earth and look at what we've done with the earth or something like that. Is it something personal? I don't think so. I don't know. I don't really know the true meaning on that. Okay, but it's just going to lead us into the next one. So the next one then, again, completely different, but next tree. So I was watching some sort of superhero kind of guy. So he was dressed up. He actually looked a lot like the character of Thor, you know, where he's got, I think, yeah, he had like a winged helmet, you know, a helmet with like wings on, which is just like Thor has, doesn't he? And it was all superhero colours, you know, he was wearing, yeah, so it was white wings. His helmet was navy blue with white wings, so that's kind of, makes me also think of Captain America. Not that I'm some sort of superhero buff, you know, not at all, but just little things that pop into my head. And he had some yellow on his top and had leggings on, so just standard superhero kind of outfit. It's weird, isn't it, the way they all wear? Like, why did it's weird when you think of it, but it's like, who started that fashion that every other superhero did exactly the same thing? You never see a superhero coming out wearing like baggy jeans or like a big oversized t-shirt and a cap on backwards, do you? They have this weird uniform. Oh, by the way, guys, I'm a superhero. If you didn't know that, oh, can't you tell by what I'm wearing? It's so weird. It's so weird. Yeah, comic stuff. Comical. Right. Okay. So yeah. So I'm watching this. I'm watching this on screen. It's almost like watching again like superhero things. Like you know, there's a series of superhero things, which obviously all of the movies are made on. It was like me watching it. You know, it was like watching these superheroes, and this particular superhero was the one I was on the screen at the time, and he was given orders. So you see this on the actual cartoon that was being played. You see him given orders, and he's given orders to destroy these enemies who were, in inverted commas, dark. Just said, these are dark, and you've got to go out and you've got to destroy them. They had control. So this is the backstory. So they had control over the planet, and they were trying, and he was trying to liberate everybody, bring them freedom. You know, because they're under this kind of dark, oppressive, I don't know, some sort of control. And what he did, this is interesting, was he was freeing up nuclear weapons that were frozen in ice, and he was also destroying things in space. Okay, so you saw him kind of like zoom out, and you see like the planet from above, and he's, I don't know, smashing things that are in space and stuff as well. And he was doing kind of like tactics of almost, well, proper tactics. You know, he would hide for a bit, and then he would go out and he would attack. And just when you thought he was winning, and you're rooting for your hero, you know, your kind of superhero, and making some real progress and making the place a better, you know, making the world a better place, which is what he was aiming to do, then the enemy would come back like 3 or 4 times even stronger. Okay. Now I'm going to give you some quick initial thoughts about that. So obviously you've got this superhero that's going around trying to make the world a better place. Despite that fitting better with like a God sort of scenario, obviously wanting a better place, you know, it made me think more of an angel actually. Of an angel. I don't know why, but it just kind of did. It might have been these wings that are on the thing, and that he was flying around. Made me think of an angel more than a kind of overall sort of God analogy, and that's probably because of we can't really picture God, can we? But I suppose we've got in our mind a lot. I suppose a bit more, let's say, what angels look like. And I think some of that's probably quite false anyway. I don't know about the whole wings thing. I don't really know about that. I've not really looked into it as to whether there's wings, whether that's just something that because they fly, we thought, let's stick some wings on them. You know, nobody's drawn pictures of them, I suppose, to actually, we know that they're human, you know, they look like humans, because obviously there's Sodom and Gomorrah and they walk amongst people, and people look at them and think something about these guys, but they look human. but they can appear as different things. So again, I've mentioned that, again, to go off from the good side, but demons appear as various different things to deceive you. That's what they do. Anyway, so the interesting thing, so they were looking to. He was looking to liberate these nuclear weapons. Now, I didn't go into the actual. I've got like this recollection, you see, of seeing this, where he. I don't know why I didn't kind of pad that out a bit more. I think it's because obviously I'm writing these. If you imagine, I'm writing these dreams down. It could be 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, oh, quick. I don't actually do it with pen and paper, by the way. I do it on my phone, but. So tapping away, writing all these things down. But I do them quickly because I don't want it to fade. I don't want to go back to sleep if I'm being completely honest. And so I think that's what's happened there. But I do have an image of almost coming into like some sort of, I want to say it was like a cave area or something like that. And these weapons were hidden behind a wall or something, and almost like a vault. It was like they were hidden, but these nuclear weapons were hidden in a vault, and there was tons of them in there. And he was like, he basically got into it and then liberated all of these weapons that were frozen in ice. So I don't quite know how the ice bit came up. I may be sort of wondering with another that I haven't really logged, or maybe even something I've seen. It's, again, to be completely truthful, if it's not written down really, I'm just kind of trying to remember. But yeah, it may well have had that kind of aspect to it, but frozen in ice. So just quick thoughts on that before I go into the last dream. It did actually make me think of Cold War becoming a hot war, to be honest. Like, why are they frozen in ice? Why would nuclear weapons be frozen in ice? Seems a bit strange, doesn't it? Hidden underground, yeah, that makes sense, but frozen in ice, what? So it made me think of, does that mean that there's going to be a nuclear sort of, well, I mean, there already is in a way a bit of a Cold War to a certain extent. I mean, there's a lot of threats, isn't there? A lot of threats going on. And obviously, Iran at the moment is trying to build nuclear weapons, not quite there yet, but maybe what is a Cold War essentially turns into a hot war, because of these are thawed out, and now we've got nuclear weapons, we've got access to these nuclear weapons. In this scenario, obviously he's freeing up the weapons, and he's a good guy, so I don't quite know the context for that. Again, with dreams, I can't always know exactly what it means. Sometimes it's very, very clear, sometimes it's quite hazy, or I think I might be on the right track, and then sometimes a bit more time, and it's, oh, okay, I've had another dream, now it all makes sense. So maybe I'll have a clarification dream at some point. But at the moment, superhero going around trying to destroy all these dark forces, these enemies, and taking control of some nuclear weapons that are frozen in ice, and destroying things in space, and then hiding, attacking. And it was just him. He was the only one. But he was going up against loads of these other ones. As I said, it was like they had way more. So I mean, if you think of it, yeah. I'll tell you what that kind of reminds me of a little bit. Was something to do with a what's it called? Person who sees in the spirit, and he was talking about how he saw this demon who was really big, really, really, really big. I think it's how he described it, and this angel, and he was seeing this all happen with his eyes, seeing this all happen because he sees in the spirit, and this angel was like trying to attack this thing and trying to throw it and do all these things, and this thing was just not budging. It's just like whatever, because it was just so much stronger than this angel in this scenario, and that's probably because of that person was so, maybe that demon was so strong in them, the angel was just really struggling against the power that person had given that demon. And then I think that it showed something about, I think he said in the book something about how he got something happened, something changed, and then that angel was able to overthrow this demon and sort it out. But it was really struggling because if it just didn't have the power it needed to overcome this demon. And this is what I've mentioned in other ones. Like, what does angels versus demons, as far as fights and stuff go, what does that look like? How does anybody win? What does winning look like? I've said that before. When you've got two immortals going against each other, they can't kill each other. What does that look like? Bit strange. But you hear of, them fighting with each other, wrestling with each other all the time. That was to do with, that's in Daniel, where, I think it's Daniel. Is it Daniel? I think it's to do with Daniel, where he's where what's it called? Michael, Archangel Michael, um, was it him? It was called, or there was an angel that was fighting with another principality, which was like the Prince of Persia, and had to ask for backup because he'd been fighting. The good angel versus the bad angel had been fighting for ages, and he had to call in backup to just sort this one out because it was a really strong, really strong. Let's say demonic or fallen angel. Not fallen. I don't want to say fallen angel because that's not quite right, but that kind of thing. Some sort of spirit being. I'll have to look up. I'll see if I'll find it. So kind of disregard my inference there as what that what kind of going at there, but I'll find the scripture that talks about that. But it's the Prince of Persia, and he talks about the Prince of Greece, and I've mentioned that in the Daniel statue and stuff like that several times. I keep talking about it. It feels like it's kind of embedded as a background narrative to so many of my different dreams. So many of them are talking about this nation that's going to come. Well, these 10 nations. Sorry, the beast system, the last kind of thing before Jesus returns. The end of the last empire. I literally did it yesterday. It was the 10 toes. It's the toes of the feet of the statue of Daniel, which is where we're pretty much there. We're pretty much there in history of this whole statue of different ages of all different empires and stuff like that. And you get down to we're pretty much at the toes now, and then that's it. Then what it says is a big rock comes in and smashes the foot of the statue. All of those nations crumble. Basically all world empires crumble, and Jesus is the ruler that will rule forever. Ushers in his kingdom. Right. Okay. So I'll try and find that. I'm going to quickly make a note of that. So that is Michael rest. I think it's Archangel Michael wrestling. Sorry. So that's that one. And then Dream 3, so this is where we finish off. And this is very brief. And then, as I said, we're going to jump on to going through end time stuff, because this Dream 3 is just a lovely little bridge, okay? So this one, I was jogging along, I was jogging to work in my hometown. Never used to do that, by the way. I used to walk in quite a lot, but jogging into town and going to a meeting of some kind with others that were of my age. The place I went to reminded me of my sixth form common room when I was ages sort of like 16 through to 18. And I mentioned this before in a couple of dreams, but primarily in the Tombstones one. I talk about the sixth form common room, which is basically an in-between set of school, because a lot of people leave school at age 16 or used to 16, and you could just go start work. Other people would stay on till age 18, either at the same school, or they'd go find a little college, what we would call a college in the UK, which is just like a couple of years really of extra education. And then you would go on to university, which again in the US I believe is called college. So that's when it gets a little bit confusing, so I'll clarify. But that, I think, is all changed now, and it's more. Actually, saying that, I don't know. I mean, my eldest is getting to that kind of age, so I suppose I should know really, but I seem to remember things have kind of changed a bit. But anyway, so I'm jogging and I'm heading off there to the school sort of area. Yeah, I'm going to work, which is a bit bizarre. On the way, there was some kind of a shooting that happened in the town centre, because I'm going through that area. And yeah, so it's big shooting in the town centre. No one was really hurt, but it wasn't seen as even a big thing. It was all like, it's not even noteworthy. What, there's been a shooting in the town, and why aren't people talking about it? It was like, that would be a big thing. That would be a huge thing if that happened in any town. In the UK, that would be a big thing, because people don't carry guns. Criminals do, and obviously, but you can't carry guns. Obviously, it's not like the US where you can. So this is really, really, really unusual. But the thing was, as I said about this, no one got hurt in this particular incident, but it wasn't a big thing, and it seemed to be kind of normal. It was like it commonly happened among the youth. It mentions here, and something similar happened really recently. So it's like, oh yeah, something like that happened last week, or happened a couple of weeks ago. No big deal. This happens a lot. It was that kind of thing. Okay, so I just want you. That's me giving you kind of like a little glimpse into where I'm going to go with things. which is just general lawlessness, I would suggest. Is that it's like what you would expect to be the norm is not. It's like people killing each other. Yeah, that's just how things are, isn't it? Oh well, it was that kind of thing. Just brushed off, nothing. Oh really? Okay. Seems like it's a bit of a big deal to me, but anyway, quick thoughts. There's not really much here. This one, there we go. So I'm talking about Dream 2. So this is the superhero one. This felt like it was an angel trying to fight on God's behalf, but maybe struggling due to the sheer numbers of unbelievers or evil in the world. Okay, so that's what that 3 to 4 times more he was getting pushed back against any kind of progress he was making. There's pushback like 3 or 4 times worse, And so it was like he was, 2 steps forward, 1 step back sort of thing, the whole way, and was really struggling. And Dream 1, yeah, as I said, I visited a hotel, so that would describe the whole looking over big gardens and that kind of garden feel, because I was walking around a garden, but it didn't really feel like it. But then now if we really rope in garden, and we're saying, I've given you all of this, you have dominion, but look what you've done with it, and we talk about a garden, well then it could be looking back at Adam and Eve, couldn't it, really? Look, I'm giving you dominion over the beasts of the earth, etc., etc. They were in a garden, weren't they? And they had dominion. Look at what you've done with it. Well, what they did with it was they rebelled. God specifically said, don't do this, and they did exactly that. And what happened? Well, sin entered the world, and look at the last, thousands of years of the outcome of that decision. So maybe that's what the message was. So it was just a brief little nod to Adam and Eve, and look at what you've done with it. Look at what you've done with it. This is not what I have planned for you, basically. But again, this is to say that everything that happens, God knows, because he can see from the beginning to the end. But you give him free will, and obviously you can do what you want to do anyway. But yeah, it's a strange. That's a strange sort of rabbit hole to go down, actually, when you think about that. And it says, also says, God has middle knowledge. So if you decided to go left, he already knows what's going to happen if you go left. If you decide to go right, he already knows what's going to happen to go right. And then the decisions you're going to make after that as well. He already knows those. And he already has a plan for you as to what you're going to do, or what he would plan for you to do. But people go off plan all the time, obviously, pretty much all the time. Makes me think of actually the film The Adjustment Bureau. That's actually, I would say that's a film you can watch. Anybody I think can watch that one. It's got angels in it, and talking about God, who's called like the boss or something like that. The boss upstairs, I think he's referred to as being. But that's a really interesting one. I've been trying to get my daughter to watch that one. I said, come on, it's really interesting, because they're all walking around, they're looking at people's books, which is like the Book of Life almost. Well, no, not the Book of Life. The Book of Life is where those that are saved and are listed in the Book of Life. And if your name's in there, then you come into heaven. If your name's not on there, you're not coming in. Okay? But no, this book is showing your life, and it's like, oh, something's going to happen here. Something's going to happen. Oh no, they're just about to go off plan, is what they talk about, which is obviously, as I said, if you think of God's plan is all written down, these angels are going around and they're given assignments. So again, it's very, very, it's an interesting film. It's an interesting film. It's like, well, I'm going to go off plan, that kind of thing, because I love this woman. It's a romantic film, but it is very interesting. I really like it. Adjustment Bureau, check it out. Sometimes I feel like I'm on the payroll, for some sort of like, some kind of film studio or something. But anyway, that's it. Sorry, then I start talking about Aladdin and the questions I had in the quiz at work that morning, which also goes back to my previous dream where I mentioned I described somebody's looking like Aladdin. Then I had a quiz in the morning for work, and the question came up and the answer was Aladdin. And then all the other there was about other 2 questions which were talking about superheroes. I'm like, I've just had a dream about superheroes as well. This is weird. Really strange. Yeah, the superheroes were mentioned in my quiz were Wolverine and Iron Man. Yeah, interesting. Yeah. Okay, yeah, that's everything actually I wanted to cover off on this one. Again, I think it was an interesting mix, wasn't it, of different dreams. As I said, that was just revelation as we went. I think that's talking about Eden in the first one, personally. Again, if you look at what's sort of said to me around those statements, I think that's probably to do with that. You never know what's going to come out with these videos. I just go with the flow, you know, see what happens. And as I said, yeah, the bit about the angels was interesting. Freeing up nuclear weapons, trying to fight for good against darkness. Yeah, interesting sort of narrative to that. And then the third dream was just anarchy. As I said, just helpful for me. I mean, sometimes, as I said, I've had dreams where there's just been a little bit of a nothing snippet. That's a good one to watch, a really good one I think to watch anyway. It's called Green Jeep. I just had a revelation on that like a couple of days ago, and that's really interesting. These are like, it's like a little one-liner, I've just thought, oh, dream 4, you know, or dream 5, yeah, there was a Jeep in it, green Jeep, nothing really happened. It just all came together, and I'm like, whoa, okay, this is something interesting. So yeah, hopefully you found it interesting. Right, I'm going to see if I can do one more before I go out and do some shopping. I'll go to a big shopping centre, so that'll be fun. Right, so that's it on this one. Hopefully, as I said, we'll go on to the next one, and you'll see if you're going from Immortals to this one to then the next one. Next one's going to be like about police and general problems, death, to do with stuff, and it basically being seen as nothing, which is where there's that connection to this dream 3 of this is now normal, this is how things are. But okay, all right, it's like a little glimpse into the future, you know. Right, okay, see you on the next one.